Hello everybody and welcome back to the Ant Holleufer YouTube channel. Today we are talking about leaf cutters, and that is because I finally have my leaf cutters. Now this setup is a little bit different and it may change a little bit back and forth, like this plant right here. Shall it be here? Who knows, only the future will tell. This right here is my Acromyrmex octoposus, and next to it is the empty Ada Mexicana. I'm currently waiting for the Ada Mexicana and they are in the post. But today we are preparing for leaf cutters. Now this video is for all of you that are wanting to have leaf cutters, all of those who are already preparing, all of those who are interested in leaf cutters, and maybe even some of those who already have leaf cutters. If you already have leaf cutters, please leave some tips I maybe didn't say in the comments down below. Now, if you just like ants, this is also for you. Let's just start the video for real. Welcome back to the Ant Holleufer YouTube channel. Oh yeah, it's me again. I will be in this video most of the time as I try to find some cover photos for you all. But the most important thing about leaf cutters is 100% their setup. Now, some of you may have seen or remember that I made a DIY leaf cutter setup last year around the same time, and I'm gonna explain a little bit about why I won't use that setup straight away and maybe never. I still have it. It's just not working right now, it's just on pause. Maybe one of these will use them in the future. But the most important thing about leaf cutters is definitely their setup. Now, why is the setup the most important thing? Well, leaf cutters can under no circumstances get a normal ant setup. It has to be 100% specialized for leaf cutter ants because, well, the fungus inside, the little fungi, requires a crazy high amount of humidity. 99 to be precise. If it's under 99, it can get higher, and we don't want that 99 all the time. More on that later. But if you have a normal ant setup, well, you can't really get that high humidity without it all molding. And together with that, leaf cutters also produce quite a lot of trash. And well, if you have a normal ant keeping setup, you can't get in the ant nest because it's bolted onto the nest or something. You can't really get into it. So therefore you need to make specialized leaf cutter nests like these ones. Now, generally, the humidity should always be 99%, as I just said. If it's under 99, well, it can get higher. And due to this very high humidity, you need to have a special system to get that much water into the pots. Now, the pot is what we call these small segments right here. This is a segment, this is a pot. And in leafcutter language, we always use these setups as pot. So this is 2 pots, and well, you need 3 pots, but more on that later. Right now, the humidity. To get this really high humidity, we need to have a plaster floor. Now 1 to 2 centimeter is what most people do use. And well, why do we need plaster? Well, you can just fill it up with water and well, it holds the humidity for a really long time. Now it's really important that the fungi must never touch pure water. And why is that? It's quite simple. If the fungi touch pure water, it dies. Not necessarily that fast, but it dies, and it isn't really any more than that. It's not longer than that. It dies. So therefore, you can't just pour water down to the plaster because, well, that would flood the entire chamber. So therefore, we have to use a specialized water system. To do that, you need to get the tubing into the plaster. So when you put water into the tube, it goes directly into the plaster and never above the plaster. And that's how you will avoid overwater from the plaster and the fungi. Together with that, it is always a good idea. Now this is not necessary, it's just, well, recommended to have some kind of divider between, well, the fungi and the plaster. Again, the plaster can squirt out a little bit of water, and if you just have a little bit of a gap, not much, just a few millimeter, well, then the fungi won't touch the plaster. And that is why it's recommended to have a little subdivider between the fungi and the plaster. It's not all who use it, but it is definitely recommended. It is really important to do lots of testing here to see how long the humidity stays up, and maybe you have used some clay balls, and well, clay balls, they suck up the humidity. So if you use clay balls, you have to overwater the setup quite a lot before, well, the clay ball sucks up all the humidity and then doesn't suck any more up. So therefore it's important to, before you get the colonies, do a lot of testing to see, well, does this system work as it's intended? Does it keep the humidity for 99% for a lot of time, or is it just short periods of time? Really important to do lots of testing here. and that is a little bit about humidity. Now, just as leafcutters requires quite a lot of specialized humidity, they also have a really special heat. It isn't really that special, but 24 to 26 is what is recommended. And well, compared to before when I said recommended, well, if the fungi has around 30 degrees Celsius, it'll just die. It will start dying quite rapidly. Now, you may not notice it once the setup is at 30 degrees, but the next few days you will see that the fungi is dying. And therefore it's really important to always keep a good eye on the heat. And once again, really important to do lots of testing before actually receiving the colony itself. Now, between 24 to 26, it may go a little bit above, but once we get close to these 29, 30, it's a red coat. Get the heat out of that pot right now. And the same if it goes below. If it goes below 24, we have 23, 22, 21. It starts to get a little bit critical to heat it up again. 20, it's really important. And beneath that, we will have dying fungi once more. So again, lots of testing is required here to get it between these 24 and 26. But how do you measure all of this? Well, that is why you need a humidity reader. You can't get leafcutters without a humidity reader. Most of them can both tell temperature and humidity, and that works really well. Now, sometimes you have the sensor inside the pot, or sometimes it can be outside the pot and with a cable going into the pot. It's not really important. It's just important that you can read the humidity and heat all time when you are at least with the leafcutters. And also a really good idea is to get a thermostat that turns on and off with a similar sensor. Now, what you can buy is a thermostat that you plug into power, and then it has a sensor that you just put into the pot, and when the sensor says it's too cold, it'll turn on a heating cable that runs around your pot, or a heating mat. And when it gets hot, well, the sensor says it's hot, turn off. And that is a really easy way to, well, get the heat correct inside the pots. And if you have such a system, you only really need to look at the humidity. Now, the problem with such a system is if you have a room that is 20 degrees like my room normally is, and I heat the pots to 24, well, then I can't see inside the pots because there's so much condensation, because if it's hot inside the pot and cold outside, you will get lots of condensation. So what I've done is I have simply just heated my room. So right now we have 25 degrees inside my ant keeping room all day, all night. And therefore, I don't really need to worry about heating these girls because, well, the room is hot. Of course, I still keep a really good eye on it because as soon as something goes wrong, it can be fatal for the leafcutters. So you really need to control the humidity and the temperature. And that is the basics of a leafcutter setup. Now, to just recap it all, you need a pot without too much wind flow, at least where the fungus is, because you want that 99% to stay the same all day long. And if there's a lot of wind going through, I don't know how, at least no holes, no big holes in the main pot with not too much ventilation. You may have 3 pots with ventilation through, but not directly holes on the pot where we have the fungi. And that is because, well, then the humidity will seek out and the heat will seek out a lot faster. So to just recap it once again, I'm gonna start over. To recap it once again, a pot without too much ventilation, at least around the main pot itself. That is to keep up the humidity, and that needs to stay at 99% all the time. Again, it's recommended that you get these 95 to 99, but under 99, water them. You need to get that up to 99. And again, with the heat, 24 to 26. Above 26, get them a little bit colder. Above 28, emergency, get them colder. Down to 22, get them a bit hotter. Down to 20, get them hotter now. And, well, that is the basics. Heat, humidity, and a stable environment. And then you have the basics of a leafcutter setup. Now, if you find doing testing that is a bit hard to keep up the humidity, you can add a little bit of substrate. Not too much. If you add too much substrate, the ants will dig in it and they will bury the fungi beneath the substrate. But if you just put around a ½ centimeter of cocoa fiber or something like that, the ants will relocate the cocoa fiber. So when it's outside and gets all the humidity, then they can drag it into, well, the fungi pot, and that's a way they can control the humidity a little bit better. Again, this is mostly if your setup isn't too good at keeping up the humidity. But now to the next part of the setup, pots. Now, I've always discussed a little bit that some setup have 1 pot, some setup have 3 pots, and that is because a grown leafcutter setup will need 3 different pots. one pot for the fungi, one pot for going out and cutting leaves. This is where you feed them the leaves, and one garbage pot. Now the reason I'm setting a grown colony will need this is because if you have a big fungi pot like I have, the ants won't go out and forage too much, so I'll just feed them the leaves inside the pot. But once they grow larger and want to forage, it's a lot better to get a secondary pot for them to go out and get the leaves, because every time I take the lid off, they get stressed, the humidity falls out, the heat falls out. So therefore it's better to get multiple pots once the colony is a little bit bigger. And that is the second pot, the feeding pot. You just get in, get some leaves, feed them in there. The colony will go out, take it, give it to the fungi. And what's the third pot? The trash can pot. What is this trash pot? Well, as I said in the beginning, leafcutters produce a lot of waste. The fungi is constantly dying. Hopefully it's growing a bit faster than it's dying, but it's constantly dying, and they will get a lot of trash. Now, leafcutters are really smart. If you get a trash pile, well, you just move it over to the trash pot, and then the leafcutters will realize, oh, this is where the trash goes. And then they should really quite quickly figure out that, well, if the trash is over here, I gotta pick it over there as well. And therefore it's quite easy to have a trash pot when they choose the trash pot with you. So yeah, just put some of the trash in there, and they should pretty soon start to realize that is the trash pot. And that is the 3 pots. One pot for the trash, one pot for feeding leaves, and the main pot where we have the fungi. Most of the time we have trash, leaves, fungi in the middle. That is the usual leafcutter setup. And that has been quite a lot of information on the leafcutter setups. Now, let's compare my leafcutter setup to this WaKooshi prototype leafcutter setup to see, well, how is one working compared to the other. Now, I would like to mention once again that this is a prototype. This is not on sale yet. I am one of the few testers of this development pot. So in the future, it may look a little bit different and maybe like this, or it have maybe changed all in total. But right now, WaKooshi is a one pot system, one pot for one colony, one pot for another colony. And if we look at my DIY setup, I have the 3 pot system. Again, this is a bit too soon, because if you have a really tiny small Ada Mexicana colony or Acromyrmex octopuses, they will never forage out to the 2 other pots. They will need to grow quite a lot before doing that. So therefore, small colony, small setup, just one pot is what I would recommend. Now in both the DIY setup and the WaKooshi setup, it is a plaster system with, well, a thick plaster, a tube that goes into the plaster, and then you can hydrate it without disturbing the ants. Quite simple, quite alike, quite the only way to really make a leafcutter setup. Now it's a little bit different for the humidity readings. I had a little sensor with a long cable going from the feeding pot down, in through, and into the fungi pot. And this wasn't too optimal, but it worked when I built it. Now this is where I am really jealous of the WaKooshi pot. I mean, I'm not jealous because I have it, but that is where the WaKooshi pot just shines. It's on a whole nother level. I got it, I took out a little thing, it turned on, connected it to my smartphone, and now I can see the readings of this all day long. It is only Bluetooth, so you have to be kind of near to it, but I have been quite a long way, but still been able to read the temperature. Now, one thing is just to read the temperature. I can stand right here and read the temperature. But the smart thing about it connecting to your smartphone is it also tracks the data. So I can look back and say, oh, at 1 p.m. they got really cold. Why? Did they do it the night before? I don't know. It's just really nice to be able to go back and look at the overall data. I've been playing a lot around with the heat, and I can see the heat goes up, falls, goes up, falls, but keeps staying in this optimal environment. And that's perfect. And I wouldn't be able to do it if it didn't track it. So that is where the WaKooshi setup with this really nice humidity/heat sensor works wonders. Of course, you can also use this in your own DIY setup. Now, next is heating. Like I said, I've changed my room to be the correct temperature, but originally I did use a heat cable wrapped around the DIY setup. And then I just plugged the heat cable into a little watch. Now I connected the watch to some power, and within a few days of testing, I realized that 60 minutes turned off, 30 minutes turned on, 60 minutes turned off, and on and on and on. Made the perfect environment, 25 degrees, 99% humidity, and that's how I did it. Now, back then I didn't know that you can just use these sensors to just put into the leafcutter setup, But I'm not sure I wanted to do that because already now I had one probe into the setup. Now this is once again why the WaKooshi setup just shines, because it also has a little port dedicated to a sensor. You can just plug it in and well, then it says inside the pod we have 24 degrees, turn the heating cable on now. Now of course you have to buy the sensor and all that, but it has a dedicated hole so you can already do it. So really good thinking on you, WaKooshi. Although that's where I have my only problem with the pod. My sensor didn't correctly fit. It was a little bit too tough to put in. But again, prototype, testing, it may change in the future, and probably has. Now to separate the plaster from the fungi, I used some small rocks. Of course you can also see in some of these clips that the glass cracked. And yeah, the glass cracked, that's just how it is. It wasn't meant to work as it did. If you want to hear the whole story, I made a dedicated video about this leaf cutter DIY setup, link in the top right corner. But yeah, I used some small rocks, some small pebbles, I think they're called, to divide the plaster from the fungi. And WaKooshi has this little 3D printed mesh that you just put inside the plaster and the fungi on top, and that is his divider. Both works equally the same, at least on principle. Now what's really great with this pot is WaKooshi's tilted lid. Now if I just turn the empty pot, you will be able to see that the lid is tilted. And why is that a good thing that the lid is tilted? Well, most of the time if you have a lot of condensation, it will form in small bubbles. And if the lid is just straight, the bubbles may start to drop down to the fungi. One drop doesn't do too much. A regular drop all day long, not good for the fungi, it will die. With the tilted lid, the drops will slowly go down the lid and not touch the fungi. A little detail, but a great detail. All in all, you can quite clearly see that I'm impressed with the WaKooshi prototype setups, and although my DIY setup works just fine, I used a lot of time constructing it, and it was a lot more expensive than what this prototype is currently scheduled to cost. Not gonna reveal the price because it may change, but it was around a third of the price and just worked. Now that has been a little bit about the setup, and I'll just say it one more time. Testing of these setups is key. It's the most important thing about this whole, well, leaf cutter, keeping them. If the setup isn't correct, if it's too dry, fungi will die, colony will die. Too hot, fungi will die, colony will die. Too cold, fungi will die, colony will die. I think I said it wrong. I don't know. It's not that hard, you just have to test it before putting the ants inside, because else you're wasting a lot of money with a dead colony really fast. Now once you have tested the setups for around 2 weeks, you can now start thinking about the ants that you are gonna buy. Of course, I know you are thinking about it before, but now you have to, well, go out and buy the ants. But before that, stop. Do some more research. Research is vital for leaf cutters. Like I've already said, you are sitting and watching this video, you may be standing, you may be running, you may be driving. I hope you're not driving, but you are seeing this video. That is really good. I would still recommend just seeing a few more videos and go into a few leaf cutter groups. Ask some basic questions, ask some things you are in doubt about. My biggest problem was the leaves. I'm gonna go more into that in a second, but just research is also key. But you're watching this video, so you're doing that thing correct already. Congrats! Now once you receive the ants, they will maybe be in a little pot like this, a little cup. And due to the fungi being really fragile, if you shake the cup, the fungi will probably deteriorate. But, well, the fungi have been transported a long way from the store. I personally live in Denmark, and well, I got them from the UK. So when they arrived to Denmark, it was smashed up. It was all destroyed. I thought the colony had died a little bit, but that is what I had read online. I would think that they were died, but they wouldn't have died. Put them in the pot. The next day, I saw a little bit of a fungus, well, back alive. So they will be completely smashed into pieces. You will not be able to recognize the fungi. Although if you drive over to the shop itself and pick the fungi up, it should be alright. But if you are receiving it in the mail or in the post or whatever it's called, it will be smashed up to pieces. At least it may be. Now once they're rebuilding the fungi, it's a good idea to put a little cup on top. That may just help them get the correct humidity in the small founding stages. If you have the humidity at 99% all day long, no problem. It's a good recommendation if you don't have to set up all sorted out. A little plastic cup with a hole and put on top of the fungi. But now to what you feed them. This is where it gets fun, because this is where you're gonna watch them cut some leaves. As you can see right now, I'm testing because my colony haven't accepted any leaves yet. Quite annoying. Now I just remembered that I forgot to tell you how I did this testing. What I did was I drove to my local garden center, picked up a lot of the leaves that they are recommended you should feed them, like bramble, took my scanner out, scanned a lot of the different leaves, and I took home 12 different leaves. Then I fed them, then the colony accepted 1 leaf, and I bought that plant, and now I give them that. More on that in a second. But quite normal once they get shipped, they may not take the leaves straight away. But what is really important here is, well, I would always recommend getting this app called Picture This. It costs a little bit on a yearly basis, not too much, not compared to what you get out of it. You get an identifying app that can identify a leaf. If you are a little bit in doubt whether it got it correct, double check, take another picture, same species of leaf, then you have the same species. And what do you do with this information? Well, either join a leafcutter group, ask them, hey, I have this leaf. What do you think of it? Is it good? Is it bad? Let me know. Or you can just research it on Google yourself. Personally, what I've been hearing is if it is a poisonous leaf, the ants won't take it. That is what I've been hearing, at least. I still think you should just ask people around, at least in the beginning. But a general thing to use, at least in the UK, is something called bramble and something called privet. This is 2 basic leaves that I haven't found in Denmark. I have found some bramble, but my colony doesn't like it. But just to once again ensure you that, well, if you get a bramble leaf, there's 28 different species of bramble. So they may not favor that one bramble leaf, but that's a lot more different bramble leaves. Now that's a little bit about the leaves. I must say this is where I'm not so professional in the leaf cutter, in the leaves part of the leaf cutter, because I just got them. They haven't taken the leaves. It's really just testing. But protein and carbohydrates, also known as sugar, is a no-go for leaf cutters. Almost all of the time. Let's just finish it here and say they don't require protein. They get the protein from the fungi. I'm not really sure how they get it. WaKooshi have noticed that his colony is taking all some small flowers from the fungi, feeding to the queen. Queen produces eggs, goes around like that. But what about the carbohydrates? Now, you don't need protein. Fungi sort it out. Carbohydrates you need though, at least in some sort. Most people will use fresh leaves, and if they cut fresh leaves, they will get the sugar and the moistness inside the leaves as a carbohydrate source. That is also why never feed them carbohydrate in the beginning, because, well, sugar or honey will distract them. If the entire fungi is destroyed and you feed them some honey, they may start to go and feed on the honey rather than fixing the fungi, and then the fungi will die and then the colony will die. So don't feed them too much. It's a little treat you can give to a grown colony if you just want to, well, get a little bit of a glimpse of them. But they do get their carbohydrates from their freshly cut leaves. What if you don't give them freshly cut leaves? I hear you say, like rose petals, dried rose petals. Well, then you have to give them a little bit of a sugar source on the side. Not too often, just a little bit of a sugar source, some sugar water, just to get them that extra, well, sugar. But to be honest, I would always recommend feeding them freshly cut leaves if it is possible. And that's been a little bit about the feeding, the leaves. Again, the leaves I don't know too much about, but moving on to the next thing. And the next thing is, we're done. That has been it for the video. Thank you all for watching. I hope you like this video. I am still working around this setup. Now, this camera changed during the video because my recording is now 40 minutes long. How long is it for you? God, I don't know. But it's long. But thank you to the members. Let's just get them up here. Thank you to all the members. Now, I'm recording this on Monday, so it may have changed. But right now, thank you to Antic. You weren't here for 2 weeks ago when I did the last studio video. Thank you to Antic for joining the helper team. I don't know why they do. This is a wall. I'm just looking. Thank you to Antic for being a Holleufer helper. Also thanks to Stans and WaKooshi, myself, and Holleufer for all being Holleufer helpers. A special thanks to Ants Norway and Medical Carcase number 9. Thank you for being members of the YouTube channel. It's been a long recording session. If you're still here, that is really amazing. I did a podcast on the Ant Pod, and that's episode 4, all about leaf cutters. If you haven't checked it out, I would recommend checking it out. It's here on YouTube. Also, a link in the description to Anchor, where you can also hear these podcasts. It redirects you to Spotify. But yeah, just search the Ant Pod and it should pop up. Episode 4, all about leaf cutters. But yeah, Holleufers, that has been it for this video. don't forget to like and subscribe. Become a member today if you like. And I will see you all in another video. Bye!